Kirivaradari Jasoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana Jasoda Nandana Brajana Ranjana Gamunati Ravanachari Jamunati Ravanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, 3rd canto, 1st chapter. You guys have the verse on the board? Okay, great. Shri Sukuvacha Evam Etat Pura Pristo Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila Gasatra Vanam Pravestina Pratva Sva Griham Radhimat Shri Sukuvacha Evametat Para Prista Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila Gasatra Vanam Pravistena Vakvasvagriham Radimat Shri Sukuvacha Evamitat Parapristo Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila Chatravanam Pravistena Vakvasagriham Radimat Shri Sukuvacha Evamita Parapristo Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila Chatravanam Pravistena Vakvasvagriham Radimat Shri Sukuvacha
Evamitat Parapristo
Evamitat Parapristo
Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila
Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila
Chatravanam Pravishtena
Chatravanam Pravishtena
Saktasvagriham Ridimat
Vakvasvagriham Radimat
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Shri Sukuvacha
Evametat Paraprishto
Evamitat Parapristo
Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila
Maitreya Bhagavan Kila
Chatravanam Pravishtena Yaktva Swagriham Riddhimat
Shri Shuka Uvacha Evam etat para prishto Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila Kshatravanam Pravishtena Yaktva Swagriham Riddhimat.
Shri Shuka Uvacha Evametat Pura Prishto
Evam Prishto
Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila
Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila
Kshatravanam Pravishtena
Chatravanam Pravishtena
Yaktva Swagriham Riddhima
Tvaktva Svagriham Radimat
Shri Sukha Uvacha
Shri Sukuvacha
Evam Metat Pura Prishto
Eva Metat Para Prishto
Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila
Maitreya Bhagavan Kila
Kshatravanam Pavishtena
Chatravanam Pravishtena
Vasvagam Rahitamat
Vasvagiham Radimat
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Shri Sukuvacha
Etam Etat Pura Prishto
Eva Metat Para Prishto
Matreyo Bhagavan Kila
Maitreya Bhagavan Kila
Kshatra Vanam Pravishtena
Chatravanam Pravishtena
Tyaktva Swagriham Riddhimat.
Bhaktva Svagriham Radimat
Shri Sukha Uvacha
Shri Sukuvacha
Evam Eta Pura Prishto
Eva Metat Para Prishto
Maitreya Bhagavan Kila
Maitreya Bhagavan Kila
Saktravana Pravishtena
Chatravanam Pravishtena
Vasvaga Haridimat
Bhaktva Svagriham Radimat
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Shri Sukuvacha
Evam Etat Pura Prishto
Eva Metat Para Prishto
Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila
Maitreya Bhagavan Kila
Kshatravanam Pravishtena
Chatravanam Pravishtena
Tyakta Sagriham Riddhimat.
Bhaktva Svagriham Radimat. How's everyone? Everyone chanting? Oh.
Shri Shuka Uvacha
Shri Sukuvacha
Evametat Pura Prishto
Eva Metat Para Prishto
Maitreyo Bhagavan Kila
Maitreya Bhagavan Kila
Kshatravanam Pravishtena
Chatravanam Pravishtena
Tyaktva Swagriham Riddhimat.
Bhaktva Svagriham Radimat. Oh, word by word synonyms. Shri Sukuvacha. Shri Sukadeva Goswami said, Evam, thus, Etat, this, Para, formerly, Prishta, being asked, Maitreya, the great sage Maitreya, Bhagavan, his grace, Hila, certainly, Chatra, by Vidura, Vanam, forest, Pravastena, entering, Bhaktva, renouncing, Svagriham, own house, Radhimat, prosperous. Translation, Sukadeva Goswami said, after renouncing his prosperous home and entering the forest, King Vidura, the great devotee, asked this question of his grace, Maitreya Rishi. So there's no purport, so I'll read the next verse and the purport. Yadva aya mantra kridvo bhagavan akileshvara paravani nagriham hitva pravish vishatmat kritam. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. What else is there to say about the residential house of the Pandavas? Sri Krishna, the Lord of everything, acted as your minister. He used to enter that house as if it were his own and he did not take any care of Duryodhana's house. According to the Gaudiya Achinta Beta Tattva philosophy, anything which satisfies the senses of the Supreme Lord, Sri Krishna, is also Sri Krishna. For example, Sri Vrindavan Dham is non-different from Sri Krishna, Tad Dhamma Vrindavan, because at Vrindavan, the Lord enjoys the transcendental bliss of his internal potency. Similarly, the house of the Pandavas was also the source of transcendental bliss for the Lord. It is mentioned here that the Lord identified the house with his own self. Thus, the house of the Pandavas was as good as Vrindavan, and Vidura should not have given up that place of transcendental bliss. Therefore, the reason for his quitting the house was not exactly family misunderstanding. Rather, Vidura took the opportunity to meet Rishi Maitreya and discuss transcendental knowledge. For a saintly person like Vidura, any disturbance due to worldly affairs is insignificant. Jai Gaura Nitai Ki Jai. Such disturbances, however, are sometimes favorable for higher realization, and therefore Vidura took advantage of a family misunderstanding in order to meet Maitreya Rishi. So these are some really nice verses. There's a lot of information in some of the classes that I listened to on this, where here we're speaking that the next 60 chapters or so, that Maitreya Rishi is enlightening Sri Vidura with transcendental knowledge. So in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, that's one thing that I want to discuss, is that we're going to be reading about, again, Brahma creating the universe and coming from the navel that sprouts the lotus stem, and Brahma he'll investigate to see where he's coming from. And then not only that, but then we'll be reading the narrations about Devahuti and Kardama Muni, and what Kapila Dev's instructions are, the eightfold mystic path of yoga, Sankhya philosophy. He breaks down the elements, and there's the super soul, ultimately the super soul, and then the spiritual soul, the self, as differentiated from the earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego, and the senses. Everything that we've just been reading about just now, the universal form of the Lord, and that we have our senses which perceive, and knowledge acquiring senses, such as the eyes and the ears and the ether and the sun and the light, because they're fashioned after the Lord had entered into the universe, the touch of spirit. Otherwise, matter can't move. Maya is like the shadow, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then another thing that was being mentioned was that there are the various different rungs of Vedanta, and one of those is Jyotish, and Jyotish is considered to be the eyes of the Lord. So an experienced Brahmana, he can actually know past, present, and future by the Jyotish. And that was actually mentioned that the different planetary positions of the planets, as they're in movement, these are different mudras of Krishna's universal form, like that. So that follows along. And so Maharaj gave a good background on Srimad Bhagavatam yesterday, what was taking place. And Maharaj Prishkit, he was cursed to die. And I mentioned this before in class a couple of years ago, and the devotees were kind of surprised about this. At the end of the 12th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, the serpent is a winged serpent, and the snake bird, his name is Gachata. He has mystic powers, and he walks right into the assembly of the Vaishnavas, the Brahmanas, and he can assume other forms because of his mystic potency. So he assumed the form of a Brahmana and walked right up to Maharaj Prithkit and bit him. right? And Maharaj Vriska died at the end of 7 days after fasting from food and water and hearing only Srimad Bhagavatam. So then, also they were saying, okay, now who's speaking? Now, okay, Sanaka Rishi is asking questions of Suti Goswami and the sage of Namasaranya. They had met again for the second time to hear at great length topics of Godhead. Here's Srimad Bhagavatam. Now, Suti Goswami, he's expressing what he had heard in the assembly of Sukadev Goswami and Maharaj Persket. Right. So now we're entering into another conversation. Suti Goswami is relating to Sanaka Rishi and the sage of Namasaranya. What Sukadeva Goswami spoke, Maharaj Persket, how Vidura approached Maitreya, and Maitreya Rishi, he's going to be speaking, and he's going to be enlightening Vidura of transcendental knowledge. So then there's a whole background in the Mahabharata, exactly who Vidura is. Vidura is, he's the uncle of the Kurus and the Pandavas. So his two brothers are Dhritarashtra and Pandu. And so then there's a history there who the father is of Vidura, which is Srila Vyasadeva. And so what happened, Pandu, he was born pale because there were like two co-wives. She turned pale and almost turned sick when she saw the renouncement of, on the appearance of Srila Vyasadeva. And so she gave birth to a pale son. That was Pandu. And then Dhritarashtra was born blind. And so then Vidura, he was born a perfect son. But what was happening, Vidura, he was living in the house of the Kurus and living at their mercy, or their uncle. He didn't approve of the treatment of the Pandavas by Duryodhana. Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra, they were both scheming how they can keep the kingdom for themselves, because when Pandu died, the Pandavas were given custody to Dhritarashtra. And so Dhritarashtra and Duryodhana were always scheming how to take the kingdom away from the Pandavas. So what we had read in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Vidura, he actually left. He left the kingdom. And what we're reading here is that Sri Krishna, he enjoyed transcendental bliss in the house of the Pandavas. And they're stating that the house of the Pandavas, the kingdom of the Pandavas is what we're saying is not ordinary. It's not different from Sri Krishna himself, because Sri Krishna experienced transcendental bliss. So perhaps Vidura, he didn't really need to quit home, leave home. He was staying with the Pandavas as their minister. And so this is who Vidura is that he's their uncle. He's the brother of Pandu and Dhritarashtra. And then Maitreya Rishi, he was born of someone named Mitra. So he was a friend of Srila Vyasadev's. And there's a very learned, pretty much almost on the par excellence of the great sages at that time, such as Srila Vyasadeva. And so Maitreya Rishi is a very, very dignified, very powerful, learned Brahmana. And he's relating these topics. So there'll be discussions within discussions within discussions, because you'll hear Suta Goswami speaking to Sanaka Rishis and the sages of Namasaranya, what he heard from Sukadeva Goswami, answering the questions of Maharaj Persket, where Vidura is inquiring from Maitreya. Maitreya is speaking, but we'll hear conversations between Kardama Muni and Devahuti and Devahuti's father, and we'll hear these descriptions. this was kind of mentioned before. It's like the cartoons or the animated movies, Cinderella, as she's singing the wonderful song. The birds are coming by and giving her the cloth and dressing her and everything, right? So Devahuti, she kind of experiences this. Her body was completely emaciated, having performed austerities, and Kardamuni was very pleased with her service, and so she was given a rejuvenated body. She dipped into a river in the heavenly planets, and so many maidservants came and dressed and adorned her, and she became very beautiful like that. So did the Maharaj want to speak anything on these verses, or?
Yes. Vidura was, although he stayed there, he did not ever become influenced by their cheating. In fact, it was Vidura that notified the Pandavas of the plan of Duryodhana and Dhritarashtra to send them to a house in Varanabhata and burn them. That was the plan, house of lacquer. He told them how to avoid getting burnt by digging a tunnel from within the house, so that they would be able to escape when the fire was set. And that's actually what happened. And it was Vidura who did say something when Draupadi was being insulted. He was the only one who spoke on her behalf. So he's a great soul. And his mother was the maidservant of the queen. First queen couldn't, or princess, excuse me. Well, she was a queen because she was married to Vichitravirya before, but then he passed away. So the Satyavati and Bhishma arranged so that they could all have children to carry on the dynasty. And the queen that first saw Dhritarashtra, by the way, Dhritar means determination or desire, and Rashtra means kingdom. He wanted a kingdom. That's what his name meant. He was dead set on having a kingdom. And that's what got him into so much trouble. He wasn't supposed to inherit the kingdom, but he wanted to. So he made so many arrangements. And Vidura was saintly. Was very saintly. Just like as you would expect from Yamaraj. He knew exactly what was the law. He knew the right thing in every circumstance. So he left on the plea of family disturbance. But actually, it wasn't really the reason he left, because he was quite used to disturbances. But he left for spiritual advancement. He wanted to get a spiritual master and get trained in the science of Bhakti Yoga. Even though he knew everything as Mahadev, still it was his duty. He was sent for this purpose. So everybody has to take that decision. And it may mean that one has to forego other responsibilities, such as family responsibilities, national responsibilities, even religious responsibilities. There's an example of Raghunath Das Babaji, Raghunath Das Goswami. He was trying to get free and join Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. But his family was very wealthy and very attached to him. They wouldn't let him go. If he would run away, they would bring him back. Finally, he came up with an idea where he would leave home and they wouldn't know where he went. So he even pulled this arrangement against the one of his religious spiritual masters. That person was also utilized to help with the plan unknowingly. And so he did not follow what he was supposed to do. But it was for a higher purpose. And ultimately, such so-called unfair dealings are acceptable because there's a saying, I think it's Chanakya Pandit, that you can abandon one person in the family to save the family. You can abandon a family to save a village. You can sacrifice a village to save a country, but you can sacrifice everything to save your soul. So that's the idea. That one has to give up everything to get Krishna. And that means, if that means giving up family or wealth or responsibilities, then that's all right, because it's for the highest purpose. And Krishna says, if you do that, Sarvadharman Parichajan Amekam Sharanam Vraja Tam Tvam Sarvapapibhyo Mokshayishami Masha. And in all varieties of religion, and surrender unto me, and I'll protect you from any sinful reaction. Now, if there's anything wrong with doing that, Krishna says, I'll take responsibility for it. You don't worry. You just surrender to me utterly, really. And this is hard for people to understand, but that's how important spiritual life is. It has to be taken as the number one priority. And Vidura is giving a very nice example here. He took the opportunity of the dispute. In fact, Duryodhana had finally reached the end of his patience with Vidura, because Vidura always kept foiling his plans. So he made him leave. He was acting as the king under Dhritarashtra's permission. So Vidura could have certainly been the king. He would, but they were following along with the normal plan that one should be married in the royal family. So therefore, his mother was not from the royal family. She was ordinary. But yes, all three. The father of Vyasadeva, he was the father of all three. So it's amazing how Vyasadeva played such a integral role in all these pastimes of the Lord.
All right. Thank you very much for that. That's very enlightening. So, yeah, Krishna takes all care of the devotee. He takes the was it? Well, if there's some karma involved, Prabhupada was saying like we're vegetarians, but vegetarian is also killing, right? So it's also karmic reactive. But we offer it to Krishna. This is what Krishna wants, right? But the devotees, we're not. We're freed from all kinds of sins. Others who prepare food for personal sense enjoyment rarely eat only sin. So Krishna, he covers that, right? He releases the devotees from that karma from killing the vegetables like that. So, there's so many walking on the ground and breathing air and drinking the water is killing so many millions of microbe living entities. So in the ordinary sense, the karmic reactive sinful person is actually still responsible for these, but the devotees were released from that too because we're engaged in the service of Krishna. So Sarvadhamma Prikshajad, like that, like Maharaj said, just surrender unto me, I shall deliver you from all sinful reactions, do not fear. And then Raghunath Das is a really good example. There was Prabhupada was talking about this in a lecture. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was asking, where is Raghunath Das? Raghunath Das was standing on the steps of Jagannath Temple, right? He was begging for prasadam, but now he's not there, right? First, Raghunath Das, he was still getting some money from his family. His family was very affluent and rich, but he gave that up for just begging for prasad from the steps of Lord Jagannath, but now he's not there. He gave that up. So that Bhaktva renouncement, they were talking about that too. In fact, they played a Prabhupada lecture, part of a Prabhupada lecture where Prabhupada was talking about that. Was it Saracharachram, Bhaktva Dvaina? You know that verse? So Lord Chaitanya was pleased with his renouncement, and then he was like, well, what's he eating now? He was taking like the refuge from the grains that were washed from the floor like that. And so Lord Chaitanya says, oh, you have this such nice prasad here and you have not invited me. And it was like soured and like bad grains, very renounced grains. Lord Chaitanya is thinking, oh, this is very nice. And so then, what had happened, what they're asking about here is just exactly where did Vidura go and what did he hear from Maitreya Rishi during this period of time? Because in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, what we read about is Dhritarashtra quitting home. Vidura again returned to the kingdom after hearing from Maitreya Rishi. He preached to his brother Dhritarashtra that you're elderly and you're living at the cost of the spoils of your brother's son, your nephews. Everyone else has died and perished in the battle of Kurukshetra. You and Gandhari, your wife, you should leave home and become spiritually advanced, and perfected spiritually before leaving this body, being attached to the wealthy kingdom. Apparently, they're very, very, very wealthy, almost unsurpassed in their opulence of their kingdoms, right? So this is when Dhritarashtra quit home, and then Gandhari, she entered the fire. They're saying that the sati right, it's a criminal affair nowadays, when the woman, she's not willing to enter the fire to follow her husband. It's kind of heinous, a criminal affair. So it's been abolished. The sati right's abolished. But I did see something where if women in India, if they were disgraced, there's a case where a couple of sisters, they were raped, and the family had them hung, but they didn't have anything to live for anyways. No one would ever accept them to be ousted by their society. So it's kind of like a win-lose situation. As they understand like the eternality of the soul a lot more than we understand that. Here in the United States, we think, oh, that's just horrible and terrible and awful. We'd be in like terrible anxiety. It would probably drive us mad. Thinking that that's something that we would have to do, right? So that's the horrible plight. That's the violence, part of the violence that comes along with that. And this is what Maitreya Rishi had heard, where he had gone and spent that time, or Vidura had heard from Maitreya Rishi during that specific period of time when he left the kingdom, that the crews, they weren't very happy, they weren't very satisfied with that. Yeah, Vidura, like what Maharaj said, Vidura was spoiling their plans. He let the Pandavas in on the secret of the plan to kill them with the house made of shellac. So I've seen that they had these, they're really beautiful. They're shellac reef, what was relief. It's built up shellac that's continued to build up, but they made these really nice forms of, like, the Roman soldiers and stuff. They were in a really plush lobby at the movie theater in North Hollywood. These were really beautiful theaters in their days. And they're closed now. They're kind of boarded up, and they kind of made them into stores, but they're still kind of preserved. The stuff is still kind of in there, just kind of covered up, with the old movie theaters and stuff. They got some in Hollywood like that. So this was called shellac raised relief. And you can look it up. You can see how it's done, how it's made. It's very polished. And, it's really beautiful. It looks really nice. So I can just imagine a really beautiful house, with this kind of fashion. The shellac, it's layered and layered and layered and layered to, make different forms and shapes. So I can see how they were able to somehow or other produce this house of shellac, and I can probably imagine it was probably really beautiful. It's like the light can also refract inside of it. It kind of appears to be illumined in some areas. That's where it's more raised, and you have more shadows. Like that. So you can kind of look it up with raised relief shellac. What the House of Shellac was probably, quite opulent. And so they had them build a tunnel underneath. In fact, there was someone else also staying with them, a maidservant. She also had 5 children. So because of the charred remains within the house, they believed that this was actually the Pandavas and their mother, Queen Kunti, right? And so they had emerged again, they didn't die, like that. And they had weapons that were effulgent as the sun. They were awarded to the Pandavas by different demigods such as Surya and Lord Shiva. And so this is how they knew that the Pandavas were near when they were living incognito in the forest, is they found like a blanket, a large cloth in the tree, and it was all the Pandavas' weapons were and which are effulgent as the sun, or were within the cloth in the tree. So they found out it was not Kula and Sahadev who was working in the stables, and it was Arjun. At the time, he was a eunuch, and he was teaching dancing lessons that he had learned when he was in the heavenly planets. And then who was Yudhishthira and Bhishma was there too. They're occupying some posts like that. So and then let's see what else to mention. I think I pretty much covered everything I want to when to speak, cover anything. Anyone have any questions or comments or topics of discussion or? Okay, so we're ready for third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, right? We're really going to get into the nuts and bolts. We're going to be hearing about Lord Vraha and Haranyaksha and DT, I guess a DT and a DT, right? So all these things are all going to be coming up. So, keep in mind it's conversations and conversations within conversations that are taking place. It's the structure of Srimad Bhagavatam, like that. And then the whole process of hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, very purifying, why we hear these topics like that. So, all right, Srimad Bhagavatam class, Ki Joy.